Thanks for tuning in to episode 5 of the SMB Labs podcast, presented by 910 West. We experiment with small business so you don't have to. On today's episode, we're interviewing Matt Dallas. And now, without further ado, here's your host, Jasmine Holmes.
Thank you for joining me. Today, I'm going to talk with a fellow marketing expert. I'm very excited to have this of our first of our marketing conversations with a local business person, local business owner, and somebody who is one of my trusted advisors and friends that I love to talk shop with marketing with. And we're going to talk about some of the challenges that we see in small business marketing, particularly around the fact that you're really good at what you do. So you're very technical and very much a technician, but a lot of times that does not translate well into your marketing because you tend to get a little too caught up into the expertise, and we forget that sometimes we have to talk to the language of our customers. And so here today with me, I have Matt Dallas. He is the area director with N2 Publishing, but don't let that fool you. He really is a marketing whiz, and I'm going to turn it over to you, Matt, to tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Cool. Thanks, Jasmine. Yeah, it's great to be on here with you. I really appreciate it. So, area director is the title. I'm technically, I guess, a franchise owner with N2 Publishing, and do is produce private neighborhood newsletters, and we do this locally here in Gilbert, but all across the country. And I'm responsible for a couple different neighborhoods. I work with folks in Val Vista Lakes, as well as Growtopia in Gilbert.
And it's a unique concept. And let me be clear here, this is a printed publication, so not digital, which, we keep hearing that print is dead. But you've told me many times how coveted and cherished this printed publication is. So it's a very unique concept. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of things that are not being printed anymore. And meanwhile, we are growing, expanding. We're having our best years. We've actually been on the Inc. 5000 as one of the fastest growing private companies in the country for 8 years in a row.
Oh, wow.
And I think it's the exclusivity of what we do. When people get something they look forward to in their mailbox every month, it means a lot to them. And we have people who literally collect every single issue because it's them and their friends and family and kids and pets that are in the publications we produce.
So you feature the residents of the neighborhoods. That makes it really special.
Yeah, the residents are the ones who actually contribute all the content. So it's kind of like Instagram or Facebook, but in print and exclusively for the neighborhoods that we work with.
Oh, I love that analogy. That's great. And so how do businesses participate in this?
Yeah, so it's a really great vehicle for a business who serves the communities that we work with to put their brand in front of them on a monthly basis through the private publication that we do. But we also have private social events. Okay. So when people are considering working with us, they know the neighborhoods, they know that they're close-knit, hard to reach, and they typically provide great service, but they also typically get most of their business through word of mouth. Mm-hmm. Okay. And the cool thing about what we do is we have the publications, which are great, but we do private social events, and we allow the business partners to connect with people in the neighborhood directly and face-to-face, as opposed to just advertising at them. And we work with great businesses, so I'm comfortable introducing the business partners, the local business people, to people in the community. The people in the community love it because they get to meet the people who put the publication together.
Well, that's really got to be the secret sauce, right? The besides that, you're highlighting, telling the people who are receiving it their stories, the fact that you are personalizing the advertiser, so it's not just some printed piece you see. They're getting to see a face that goes along with that printed ad.
Yeah, that's huge.
So I bet there's some challenges, though, in producing those printed ads, because as I mentioned, as I started this episode, I see this a lot. It's difficult for business people, particularly small business owners, to be able to step outside that technician mode and talk about their business.
Yeah, you're totally right. I mean, it's the whole myth, the entrepreneurial myth that, people who start businesses are entrepreneurs. I mean, I would agree that typically they're not. Typically they're technicians. They're technically good at what
Mhm.
they do, but they're not necessarily business people or marketers, so that's where you and I kind of come in to help them out, right?
Yeah, and so you shared with me as we were prepping for this, a kind of a great example of where that can be a bit of a fail for a business in the ad. So do you want to share that with us?
Yeah, I mean, because we put these ads together for our clients, and we have a lot of clients who have traditionally just worked through word of mouth and relationships,
Yes.
but they really like what we do. So they don't have typically an ad agency or somebody doing those.
Sure.
And when we start that process, they want to say, tell all the features typically of what they provide, of their product or service. And they're very proud of it, right? Because sometimes it's owner operator and it's them, and they are really good at what they do.
Yeah.
However, what I try to steer them towards are the stories, the benefits, what makes them different in the marketplace, and what helps them stand out. And
Okay.
it's not always the same thing. There's a saying of uh, know all you tell, but don't tell all you know. I think sometimes business owners want to tell everything about what they do, and that's not necessarily the best way to market their business.
Right. It's super fascinating to us, but to Joe Schmo on the street, it's like, I don't care how you're going to unclog my sink or how you're going to get me more business or how you're going to make my car run better. I just want that to happen.
Yeah, yeah, and a lot of times it's the feeling, right? It's the feeling they want. Not They don't care how it happens, right? So it's the
Yeah.
feeling of a successful outcome, and
Yes.
sometimes that can be portrayed through pictures and videos. You don't even need any words, right? But you have people that want to use a lot of words to say how they're going to do all the great things they're going to do.
Gotcha. Yeah, and that's particularly in advertising. I mean, you've got a small window, a small space, so physically limited, but then also a small window of people's attention to grab their attention. And so,
Yeah.
if you put a novel in an ad, nobody's going to look at it for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're totally right, because people's attention is so fragmented, right, these
Yes.
days. And what we're trying to do is grab their attention, create a little bit of awareness for the businesses that we're working with.
When you mentioned something earlier that I think is a key point that I want to call out, which is really talking about the benefits, not the features. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, people want to know, how it's going to help them, right? You have the what's in it for me kind of concept. And
Yep.
at the end of the day, I think that describing how they're going to feel with a successful outcome, and what they're really going to benefit from is more important than how you get to that point, right? And you may get to that point, like a car, for example, right? Like I
Mm-hmm.
work um, Lexus, and it's not necessarily about all the technical details, but it's about that feeling of driving that vehicle, right?
Yes.
And that's really what matters. Not everybody cares about every single specification, but it's really the feeling. And in a lot of businesses, it's about that feeling that people are actually buying, essentially. As long as they feel good about the outcome, that's what really matters.
Gotcha. So is that something when you're working with your clients, have you honed that skill on helping to draw that out for them? Because that can be a tricky one.
It can be, one thing that I try to do, because with a printed publication, I mean, there's no way to do that through video,
Right.
directly in publication, obviously. So doing that through pictures. And, I've had clients where when we start the relationship and we start talking about their ad, they want to make the ad all words, right?
Mm-hmm.
Copy. And what I try to do is extract from them the feeling or emotion that their prospect is either trying to move away from, because typically people take action more to avoid something negative than to move towards something positive. So you're kind of
Sure.
working with both of those.
Mm-hmm.
So either looking for a word or a picture word that uh, is descriptive of either a successful outcome or trying to avoid something negative. Okay. And what I'll do is I will look for photos that have that feeling. Okay. So for example, one time I had a plumbing company that I worked with, plumber, and I found this great picture. It's a really exaggerated picture of a house flooding. So the water was
Yeah.
6 feet and like the whole house was completely underwater. And we did the ad to basically, the idea was to avoid that negative outcome.
Yeah.
Right. And the picture that took up most of the ad, but it was attention getting.
Yep.
And it had that feeling like, oh no, can you even imagine if this really happened?
Yep.
And then at the same time, you have the flip side where you want to find a picture or something that describes the feeling of positive, successful outcome. Like for example, massage place would come to mind, where when you finish a massage and a spa treatment, like you feel amazing, right? So
Yeah.
you want to have a picture of somebody in their target market that is smiling and maybe jumping, or like, just showing a tremendous amount of joy, right?
Yeah.
So you're portraying like, this is a successful outcome of working with this place. This is how you'll feel in a very positive way later. And you try to do that through pictures, not words. And, people are drawn to pictures.
That's a really great tip then, is the try to visualize, like what do those words look like? What visual do they bring to mind? So I think it's a great approach to that. And how can we, convey what we'd say in 15 words, but with some kind of image that evokes that. And it's a great example of the two sides of the coin there, which is, in some cases it just makes sense to show, like you said, that sort of thing you want to avoid, that negative outcome. Because in plumbing, I mean, there's just not that much we get excited about, right? But we do really care that our house doesn't flood while we're on vacation. Whereas for other businesses, like you said, with a spa, you might not necessarily want to evoke that emotion. So I think that's a really great way to look at that as well, is just depending on your business, be really aware of what's going to be most attractive. And you said something that I agree 100% with, keeping your ideal client in mind too, right? Who's the right person for our business?
Yeah, no, I think that's super important. And the question, there's kind of like a secret thing that, I'll share with you that I feel really strongly. The question I suggest that my clients ask people is, what made them engage with their business now at this point?
Mm-hmm.
Because you may think that their business is great for A, B, and C reason, but there's a good chance that they're missing the real reason why people are engaging with them and engaging with them at this moment in time. And I think if you can extract that from your current customer base, then you might get insight into the emotions that go into somebody making a buying decision or taking action.
Yep.
And if you can connect with those emotions and those timing issues, like the things that lead to the timing being right at that point, and you can capture that, I think that's invaluable for somebody when they're marketing their product or service.
No, that's a really great tip. I hadn't thought of that before. We've done similar things where it's, talk to your customers and tell them how you've benefited them, because a lot of times what you think the benefit that you provide is very different. Again, it goes back to that you're the technician and you're so technical, you assume it's because I unclogged your sink, but it may be instead,
Right.
I got it done really fast, and so you didn't interrupt your dinner party kind of thing. But I love what you're doing there, where you're flipping it as what made them decide to buy right now, because that's really helpful information to get a sense for what are those drivers that make somebody tip that, because I think a lot of times we just don't know and we sort of guess at it.
Yeah, and a lot of people want to find out and understandably, the source of, they try to, source their information and their prospects, which I think is important. But I think more important than that is why at that moment, like what was the trigger event, if you will?
Right.
What's his name? Craig Alias, has the whole trigger event book, but like, what was that event that led to this action actually taking place?
Yeah, no, that's a great, excellent way to look at that. I'm going to have to go back and think about that a little bit myself now, maybe talk to some of my customers, because we see it all the time. I've got the name of a handyman sitting on the bladder on my desk that I haven't called. It's been sitting there for a month, and it's like, yes, I know I need this done, but it's not enough of like, haven't had that trigger yet to make me actually pick up the phone and make the call. Like I haven't gotten to that that pain point just yet, right? So really understanding what that is, then you can talk to people at the right time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. So any other any other things you see that people tend to do, like common mistakes when they're doing ads or working with the publication that you think other small businesses could benefit from?
I try to encourage people to keep it really simple,
Okay.
to follow the AIDA principle of attention, interest, desire, and action,
Okay.
and to really hone in on what makes them different or unique, and how do you tell that story, and is there a picture that we can use to tell that story. And sometimes I'll look for pictures. We use, sometimes stock photos and I'll look for photos based on an emotion, like I'll type in happy, right?
Yeah.
Or sometimes it's, more product specific, but the idea is something simple, something that tells a story, touches an emotion. Emotion is huge, because a lot of this advertising stuff happens subconsciously. Like people aren't consciously aware of why doing what they're doing or buying what they're buying in most cases. But it's about a feeling, right? I had a lady recently say that the publication feels warm and fuzzy. And
It's like my favorite sweater.
and that's what we want.
Yeah.
People want to be associated with that, right? Want to be associated with something good, and they want their business to be associated with something good. So how do you do that through words and pictures? Is challenging. It's kind of like a lost art, I feel like, these days, but
It is.
but I feel like I've gotten pretty good at it over time.
As I've been working on my 6th PowerPoint in the last 6 weeks, and it's the same thing. I don't want words all over these slides. How do I find these images, and trying to come up with, okay, here's the concept that's in my head. What does that translate into images? That it takes a lot of brain power. And I think these days we're moving so fast in business in general, but marketing, particularly online, moves so fast that we don't always take the time to think that through the way we should. And I do think there's benefit. I mean, what you're talking about really does, when you take the time to really think through how can you visually represent that feeling you're going to create, sounds like it adds a lot of success.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's more powerful to have less words. I mean, if you're putting a headline together, an intention grabbing headline for something, I try to pare that down. Like, how can we make this one word or two words, 3 words? Like, is there one word that we really want people to gravitate towards, or 3 words? I had an eye doctor that did this really well. We went through this exercise, and there are 3 words that really resonated, that they wanted their customers to resonate with.
Yeah.
And it was great. We put those 3 words into an eye chart, and it was a great ad, actually.
Oh, that's really clever. Yeah. And did how successful was it, if you don't mind sharing that?
It's great. It's a lot of people. It caught everybody's attention,
Good.
and it sent the right message too, which I think is really, really important.
Excellent. So it did exactly what it was meant to do. You mentioned a couple times, in addition to using visuals to evoke that emotion, to tell the story, that competitive difference. And I wanted to chat a little bit about that too, because I think that's the other place that it's very easy to get mired in what really does make you different. Anytime I give a presentation and I talk about this, I say, and the first thing out of your mouth cannot be customer service unless you have a specific example of how you do that.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, I think that's the easy thing for people to fall back on, is, we provide great customer service. But I don't know, in today's day and age, most places provide great customer service, right?
With social media and reviews, you have no choice. Like, you're going to get called out if you're not doing the right stuff and delivering a superior experience. So yeah, I say that's really any for the game anymore. Is there any techniques or any tools that you use to help people kind of ferret out that difference?
For us, for our product, I mean, for what we do, our competitive advantage is really the relationships we have with people. I mean, we're a relationship-driven business, and the publications are great. They're the vehicle that we deliver this stuff in right now, but it's really the relationships with local businesses
Mm-hmm.
as well as relationships with people in the communities that we serve. And, we have ways to communicate that difference with our people. But, I try to pull that out of my clients is, okay, what really makes you different? What makes you unique in the market? Why do people buy from you to begin with? And what makes them keep coming back?
Yeah.
Because not everybody knows. I mean, they
Right.
may think because, they make a great pizza, that's like
Yeah.
an example, but it might not be that, it might be something else that they're doing that gives them that advantage. And I think sometimes you got to ask the right questions to get that, to figure that out.
So is that one where you got to kind of follow your gut instinct a little bit when you're talking to somebody and listen out for what they say and then sort of dig deeper when you hear those trigger sort of phrases?
Yeah. And I think, I try to challenge people too.
Okay.
I try to take a stance of, yeah, I mean, that sounds great, but what does that mean really? Is that really why? I mean, a lot of people say that, what really makes you different and unique? And I think if you dig a little bit deeper with people, you have a much higher quality conversation. And I think you get to the root of what really makes a business successful, because it's not always what's on the surface.
Sure. That makes it. It sounds like though, discovering that differentiator is one of those tasks that it would make sense to do with somebody else, possibly a marketing professional, or at least with another business owner, somebody who's familiar with your business, because it sounds like it would be difficult to try to, because you wouldn't call yourself on it, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm going to ask you our final question, but first, tell us a little bit about, as we've been talking today, if a business has liked what they've heard and is interested in learning more about N2 and your publications. Actually, first tell us the two neighborhoods again that you're in, and then talk to us a little bit about what that looks like getting involved.
Yeah, so thank you for the opportunity. So N2 Publishing, N2 stands for Neighborhood Networks.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, really what we do is build networks within neighborhoods. And we work with people all over the country. So we have around 1,000 neighborhoods that we work with. So we can work with people local here in, Gilbert. In Gilbert, we work with Val Vista Lakes, Growtopia, Seville, East Valley, we work with a few others, Encanterra. As a neighborhood around that we work with, and some others, Ocotillo, Fulton Ranch, Mountain Bridge, and Las Andes, and Mesa, and then about 15 others in the valley. But if somebody wants to reach these neighborhoods, then what we would do is we would connect with them, find out a little bit more about their business. We always meet with people face to face because what we do is very relationship driven, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you can imagine I was going to invite one of my business partners to dinner with people from the community. I want to get to know them and who they are, right?
Yeah.
We're actually really selective with who we work with. We don't work with just any businesses.
So that's kind of
But
interesting. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that? I'm assuming it's because of the relationships piece, but I'd love to hear a little bit more about that, because you don't see that a ton. A lot of times, particularly in marketing, companies will sign up anybody with a pulse.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of how we started, from what I understand, back in 2004.
Uh-huh.
And what we realized is that the people in the neighborhoods we work with are very selective, and we should be more selective with who we work with. And we want to work with people who are a good fit for the long term, and people who want to build relationships, who have built their business through relationships, and that provide a really exceptional product or service.
Okay.
And that's just been, kind of how we've done it. So, not to say that, certain businesses do a bad job necessarily. It's just that they may not be a good fit for our program and what we do. Right.
Yep.
And it has worked pretty well, like we've grown and, things are going well, and we've expanded into different areas and different product lines as well.
Perfect. Well, that's right, because you started with one publication, the Val Vista Lakes edition, and then it's only been in the last year and a half that you expanded to Growtopia?
Yeah, it's been August. So what is that? Just shy of a year and a half that we started working with Growtopia, which is a great neighborhood. And over time, I just met people there, and they said, "Hey, you should do this in our neighborhood." And I agreed. And give it a
How
shot.
often do you have people coming up to you and saying, hey, I wish you'd do this in my neighborhood? But you probably get asked that a lot, huh?
All the time. Yeah. People love it. I mean, people love what we do, which is really flattering. It's really cool because, I mean, here's maybe the secret sauce of what we do.
Yeah.
People want to connect with their friends and neighbors, and we help them do that. Whereas people are so busy, it might not happen naturally on its own.
I think that's a great observation. Because I've always felt really bad. We live in the middle of suburbia, and I hardly, I talk to my neighbors a little time to time over the fence, but really don't. And it's not that I don't want to know them. It's just that, yeah, you're running around doing a million things. You just don't take that time. So it's neat that you guys saw that need and created a product to capture that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what we do.
Perfect. And we will have your contact information in the show notes, but do you want to shout out, is there a website, email, phone? What would be the best way to contact you if somebody was interested, particularly in Val Vista Lakes or the Growtopia neighborhoods here in Gilbert, and wanted to see if they might meet your high standards?
Yeah, thank you. You know what's funny? We do everything really very relationally, face-to-face with people. People can email me. I mean, that's probably the best way to contact me directly. My email is matt.dallas@n2pub.com. So it's matt.dallas at letter N, the number 2, pub.com. You can follow me on Instagram. It's matt_Dallas_N2. And then, they can check out what we're doing there or on Facebook. And I can help somebody work with neighborhoods literally anywhere in the country. So
Okay.
if somebody, wants to work with somebody in Paradise Valley, for example, I can help them with that. Or if they want to work with somebody in Kansas City, for example, I can help them with that as well. As far as connecting them with the right neighborhood.
All right, perfect. So if they've liked what we've talked about, but they're pretty much anywhere, just reach out to you and chat with you. And maybe since it's about relationships, they should connect with you on Facebook or Instagram first and comment a little bit on some of your stuff, build that relationship digitally. And then when they reach out, you might recognize that screen handle, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm pretty active. We share stuff through Instagram, especially, and they can check out a little bit about what we're doing and get a feel if they feel like it might be a good thing. Then we can talk face to face and show them more of the program if they're interested in something like that. Excellent.
So I'm going to ask you our one final question. I always like to know. It's curious for me. I know definitely there's passions that drive what I do because being your own boss sometimes is very thankless. So what is it that gets you excited, gets you out of bed? What keeps you passionate about your business?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a pretty simple answer though. It's the residents in the communities that we serve. And if we haven't met, I'd love to share a really cool story with you. That happened early on that really taught me a really important lesson, because it seemed like when I started doing this almost 5 years ago, it seemed like a cool thing to do. It seemed like a fun business to be a part of, and all that stuff. But I was working on a publication. It was our second publication, so it was very, very early on, and doing an article about a couple that had been married a long time in the neighborhood. And I was kind of nervous meeting this couple. And I went over to their house. It was actually somebody I met through the chamber. His parents live in Val Vista Lakes.
And that's the Gilbert Chamber. We'll give it a little plug while we're here.
Yeah.
Matt and I are both members. Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah. So I met Tim through the Gilbert Chamber. He's like, yeah, my parents live in Val Vista Lakes. They've been married for a long time. And I said, hey, that's great, because our February Love Valentine's issue is going to be about a couple married a long time. So I went over there to interview them, and I was nervous. So I started recording. So I kind of recorded our conversation. And we talked about that for a little bit, how long Jim and Kate had been married. But then he brought out this suitcase of all this memorabilia, all this stuff that he had worked on throughout his life. I'll just give you some highlights.
Yeah.
He had a letter from J. Edgar Hoover because he did a sketch of a bank robber and helped catch this guy for the FBI. Okay? He created Arizona's 50th anniversary stamp. So he had a letter from the vice president at the time who, oh my gosh, I'm going blank. It would have been
in the 80s, maybe?
60s.
60s. Oh, goodness.
It was, oh my gosh, I'm going totally blank on who it was. But he had a letter from the Vice President of the United States for that. All this stuff. He invented the 3D camera. Okay.
Oh.
Just a. He shared all this stuff with me, right? And it was very meaningful to him. Okay. And we did this great article. We shared all this stuff. He actually had a cabin up north in the White Mountains, and they wouldn't let him go to the cabin anymore. So he literally moved his cabin that he built himself off of the land that was on down the road and moved it someplace else. Like, just amazing guy, right? Great story. We run the story. Everybody loves the story. And then a few months later, about 6 months later, he ends up passing away. And it was really touching because people started asking me, hey, did you know Jim passed away? And, I knew that had happened. They said we should do something to honor him in the publication. So I got with his son and we talked and, see if he was open to it and everything. And we ended up running Tim's eulogy for his father in the publication. And what was so cool about that is it really connected with people in the community and in the neighborhood. But the thing that I realized later was that I had recorded the initial interview. So I was able to share that with his son and his grandson, and him describing all the stuff that was really meaningful to him in his life. And it was it had such a big impact, right? In the community, but with his family. And what we do is really a lot more than just putting a publication together. It's about connecting people, sharing these stories. And I get feedback all the time, every single month, text, email, Facebook message, Instagram message from people in the neighborhood about how much they love what we do. Yeah. And that's really important because, well, one, it's important that they like it, right?
Right. Well, and bottom line is, all else aside, like if they don't like it, you're not going to be having a job anymore, right? But beyond that, it's definitely sounds like it's making a huge impact. Yeah.
It's huge because that's what the businesses are then associated with. And that's so important, and when businesses support this thing that everybody loves and they get seen and associated with all this, it's great for their business and their brand. It's a great association. We see a lot of negative associations sometimes with business and different things out there, but it's such a great warm and fuzzy, right? Way for business to market and brand themselves with something that people love.
Oh, that's cool. That's really cool. I love that. I think that's probably the best plug you could have made for why you'd want to be in one of these publications. It's that transfer of the affection and the trust. And I do digital marketing. That's incredibly difficult to do online, and in any medium. And then the fact that you guys have found a way to do that in print publication is just really cool. So thank you so much for joining me today. This has been a pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely.
We hope you enjoyed episode 5 of the SMB Labs podcast presented by 910 West. Remember, if you heard something that you liked, be sure to share it with your friends. Thanks so much. See you next time.